All right, hey, welcome back. This is Alonzo, beautiful wife, and this is from Genesis to Revelation, part 40.
Ooh, 40.
Yeah, so we're about to hop into 1 Kings chapter 17. I don't really have much to say. We've just been going down the lines of like people taking the throne from each other in Israel, and what's been going on with David's descendants in Judah. And right now we are on Jehoshaphat in Judah, and Ahab and Jezebel, as we're all familiar with, in Israel. Who was before? Jehoshaphat's father was Asa? I believe so.
I think so.
Okay, yeah, Asa. All right, anyway. So let's go ahead and get started in chapter 17. I didn't feel like having to like figure out the sitting arrangement for this one today.
The sitting arrangement.
I mean, this is fine, but does anybody really read along with us?
What do you mean? Yeah.
Is this too bad?
That's kind of weird. Like, what's the point of it being like that?
Well, we see it like that, but the people, they can see everything now. Now they know. See, look.
Can't they already?
Well, when we do it this way, it kind of cuts off some of the screen, so they don't know what chapter we're in after I scroll down.
Oh, so how does it look on YouTube? Let me see. Do it.
Okay.
Scroll out.
But we don't make reels from this one anymore anyway, so. But the people, they can see everything now. Now they know.
I mean, yeah, it's fine. I love that.
That? Yeah, so.
It looks so like.
Restream does that now, where you can put the thumbnail before.
That's cool.
And you say you like the thumbnail?
Mm-hmm. So professional.
Yeah, you know, I just sat down at the computer one day and just asked the Lord to give me a vision. All right, you guys. I know this series is usually supposed to be at 5, but I get off of work at 4, and the studio is like 2 steps away because it's in the same apartment complex. And I mean, yeah, sure, 5, but does it really hurt anyone to start early? Every single time.
It's recorded.
Yeah, it's recorded. And there's stuff to do. I have a podcast to edit with the Howards, and
I did not know that was the last name.
Damarius Howard.
I didn't know that.
You know, Charlene's about to actually get her last name. You were in there. Yeah, you're right. That's why I know that, because they were telling that to you.
Mm-hmm.
Forgot because you left in the middle of everything.
Yeah.
I got to figure out, because this corner, to me, doesn't look good. We have the fire extinguisher right there, or the pull down right there. I can't do anything about that. But then the wall is just, it's too tacky.
What do you mean? We don't even film that side.
I had to sit that side.
Oh. But it still didn't even show.
I mean, I didn't zoom in that far. It still shows.
Oh.
I forgot the angle that I was recording at. I should have been in this corner. So I should have pushed the table all the way back to the wall.
Oh.
So that I could be in this corner fully and then not have to show that part. But yeah, we'll know about it next time. But Charlene and Damarius, they look good in the corner right here. So we got a testimonial podcast coming out from our brother and sister in Christ that just got back from Ethiopia. And we'll get to editing that later. But okay, we're in 1 Kings 17. We very likely might stay here the entire episode. Or maybe in 17 and 18. But all right, let's continue. So he just pops up out of nowhere. Can you see? It says now, wait. 1 Kings 17, verse 1, NASB version, and let's pray. Lord, give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to understand what it is that we are receiving out of your word here. In Jesus' almighty name, amen. So now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab is the king in Israel, as the Lord, the God of Israel lives, whom I stand, or before, I don't know how I missed before whom I stand, there shall certainly be neither dew nor rain during these years, except by my word. Then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, or Kerith, which is east of the Jordan. Okay, so I don't know if it was last episode or whenever, but I was telling it to them yesterday about how dry places, barren places, a better way of thinking about it, barren places are an indication of the curse. Barren places are an indication that God's hand is not there. Barren places is an indication of unrighteousness, because when righteous people live in a place, God also blesses the land on behalf of righteous people. Go read 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I'll hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal the land. All right. And so a part of God's reward for seeking him is healing the land. And so if the land sucks, you know what that means? It means the people suck. All right. It means the people are in unrighteousness. And so we see in Abraham's case where him and Lot had to split up. If we go back to Genesis, which we have read already, where Abraham and Lot had to split up because their parties, what belonged to them was too great to stay together. Abraham let Lot take the better land. Abraham's land was not as good as the land portion that Lot took. But nevertheless, we don't read about how Abraham was hindered from picking the worse off land. No. Abraham was still blessed. It says Abraham was old and advanced in years, and God had blessed him tremendously in silver, gold, and livestock. And then we see even with his son, it didn't matter. His son, the Bible says there was a famine in the days of Isaac. Isaac goes to another place during this famine, and he sows and he gets 100-fold return on the harvest of what he sowed. And so the condition of the land had nothing to do with the blessing coming to those who are blessed. And so where Abraham, but where Isaac went, the people that was there before them obviously were unrighteous. And so there were places where it's just barren. It sucks. The land is not conducive for agricultural work, yada, yada, right? So all that being said, so when Elijah says, I am going to shut the heavens, God has given me the power so that by my word it rains, by my word it doesn't rain. All right? Why would God do that? Remember what I said? Barren places rain helps places to be fruitful and lush, right? So if a place is barren, you know what that means? There's not much
fruit.
Yes, because there's not much
What?
rain. Yes,
Oh,
babe.
sorry.
I gave you all the keys,
Sorry.
but there's not much rain. Okay, and so remember, I was saying like the whole drought stuff is basically an indication that like God's even bringing judgment to a degree, right? When you think about how the kings are, it says Ahab did worse. Now we read about how terrible all the kings were in Israel after Jeroboam, and it says Ahab to this point is the worst. He's the worst of the worst. And so now what does God do? All right, now I got to curse the land. So I'm going to send my prophet Elijah. I'm giving Elijah the power to shut up the heavens. All right, so he says, now God told him, this is verse 2, God told Elijah, go away from here and turn eastward, go to the brook, which is by the Jordan, or east of the Jordan, not by the Jordan. It says in verse 4, and it shall be that you will drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to provide for you there. And so there's a really nice verse. I don't know where it is. I have to look it up. We'll get to it. But the Bible talks about how even in famine, the righteous shall have plenty. And so we see here, the prophet comes, all right, there's about to be famine because there's not about to be any rain. So there's not going to be enough grass for all the animals to eat, which means the animals are going to get sick. Animals are going to start dying. And if the animals are dying, that means that there's not enough provisions to go around for people to eat, yada, yada. Nevertheless, though, there's a brook that God wants Elijah to go to. So now Elijah's going to have water. Even in the middle of the famine that's about to happen, Elijah's still going to have water. And he says, I'm going to command the ravens to feed you there. And so this is literally indicative of that verse. That even in a famine, the righteous shall have plenty. And so it doesn't matter what the world is going through. If you're righteous, if you're living uprightly before the Lord, well, it doesn't matter. You could be in the world, but you're not going to have to suffer what people that are of the world suffer because you're not of the world. So Elijah, this is proof in the signs that what it says in Malachi 3, that there's going to be a visible indication between those who serve God and those who don't serve God. Where those who don't serve God are suffering because of all this natural phenomenon going on, or even supernatural phenomenon going on. But those who do serve God, they don't even know what it means to suffer in that manner. Suffering for righteous sake, sure, but they're not suffering from hunger. They're not suffering from not having water. They're not suffering from not having provision. Okay, and so he went and did everything according to the word of the Lord. That's very important. So he went and did everything. You know what everything means?
What?
Everything. According to the word of the Lord. Very key. Very key. Highlight that verse. For he went and lived by the brook, which is east of Jordan. Not west of Jordan. Not west of Jordan, right? Not north. He went exactly to where God told him to be, at the brook Kerith, east of Jordan. And because I like saying this, the grass is not greener on the other side. The grass is greener where God tells you to go. Because then you're in his providence, or providence is a theological term. But like Pastor Jonathan says it this way. There are men that are trying to make it in ministry in America because they're from America and they're used to America and all the festivities and plenty that we have over here, that are suffering in ministry because God called them to go somewhere else and they refused to go. When if they were in that somewhere else, they'd be living like kings. Like we talked about how like when you go on a mission trip and you find out how drastic the exchange rate is in some places, right? How powerful the American dollar is in another country. But because people don't want to go to these other countries and have to basically stand and fight and live by faith over there and establish something over there, they come over or they stay in a place where they shouldn't be, or they go to a place where they shouldn't be, and then they don't experience the provisions of God, and they're wondering like, why is stuff not working in my life? And it's because they didn't do it what the beginning of verse 5 says. They didn't go and do everything according to the word of the Lord. So some people are suffering simply because they're not where God told them to be. They're not with who God told them to be with. They're not doing what God told them to do. But that's not the case for Elijah. It says, and the ravens, exactly as God said, brought him bread and meat in the morning and bread and meat in the evening, and he would drink from the brook. So I mean, we can get into how supernatural this is because ravens don't share. This is crazy. And there's what's the word? Theologians will tell you that these were like the king's trained ravens, which is, it's a nice story to tell. I haven't done my research on it, nor do I care to, but I mean, it's not really even that important. Just even ravens feeding him is crazy enough. Doesn't matter where they came from to me. So everybody else is experiencing famine, and Elijah's eating twice a day. Not just eating twice a day, he's eating bread and meat twice a day. I mean, now that I think about it, if there's a famine in the land, where are birds getting bread and meat from?
They're stealing it.
And that's why they got it, that the ravens are probably like trained ravens from the king, because obviously the most likely source to have something in the land would be the king. So verse 7, but it happened after a while that the brook dried up because there was no rain in the land. Then the word of the Lord came to him saying, arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and stay there. Behold, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. And so learn something here. This is all about God providing for you, and even in the midst of the world going through tragedy, right? Even in the midst, like if Kamala Harris won, and regardless of what you think, if you think Kamala was a better pick, not talking to my wife, you're an idiot. Literally, you're an idiot. Everything she ran on was just off of lies and things that don't matter. And she's just very inept at the job. It doesn't matter how good a person is, right? It doesn't mean that they're the right person for the job. So they ran on lies. They even ran on lies when it came to her identity, which is mainly what they were trying to push, her identity. But nevertheless, right, even if she did become president, it would not have mattered to Christians. Ahab is the king in Israel. Nobody in the Democratic Party, whoever was in the cabinet or whatever, is worse than Ahab. Nobody. Kamala Harris is not worse than Ahab. But Elijah is living in Israel, and Ahab is the king. And we know how bad Ahab is. But Elijah's still eating twice a day. He's still drinking. He's living by a brook. And even when the brook dried up, because the curse was still on the land, so there was no water coming, right? It wasn't raining, so there was nothing resupplying the brook. What does God tell him? After that dried up, now go to this next place. So it wasn't like God didn't have enough, right? It's like, man, I could take care of you for so long, but no further. No, it's not the case. As soon as the natural means that God was using to provide for him was depleted, God already had the next place for him to go, the next steps for him to take, right? Glory to God. There's something I want to say there, but it's escaping me. But I'm going to stop until I get it. Yes. I think the prophet Isaiah says that, I think it's like 45 or 54. There's a verse that says, before they call, I've answered, right? And while they are yet even speaking, God hears them. Which really means, Pastor Jonathan says it this way, but I think he uses a different verse. He says, before the need ever even arises, God has already supplied. He uses the verse in Malachi about your storehouses being full. Because if the storehouse is the extra. So if the place where you keep the extra is also full, that means before the need to get more even arises, you already have the answer in the storehouse, because where you put the extra is already full. And then in like manner, what we're talking about out of the book of Isaiah, before you've called, I've answered. So even before Elijah would have come to the point where it's like, dang, there's no more water in this place, God had already spoken to a widow in Zarephath, the Bible says. And so let's pick up in verse 10. So he arose and went to Zarephath. It says, and when he came, now Zarephath is not a place where Israelites live. And so God spoke to a woman who's not even a Jew. Keep that in mind for what we're about to read. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the entrance of the city, behold, a widow was there gathering sticks. And he called to her and said, please give me a little water in a cup so that I may drink. As she was going to get it, he called to her and said, and please, that lasagna from Nadine, please bring me a piece of bread in your hand. All right. So he's like, I need something to drink. And also, let me get some of that bread you got right there. But she said, as the Lord your God lives. So why did she answer him like that? Because these two already know each other. Because God already spoke to both of them. God said, I've spoken to the widow. Go there. She's going to provide for you because I've told her to. And then he said that to Elijah. So obviously Elijah has been spoken to as well. So when he gets to the gate, he recognizes, oh, she must be the one. And then when she sees him and he's making the request of her, she recognizes, oh, this is the guy God spoke about. But how does she answer? Why does she answer this way? That as the Lord your God lives. Because they recognize each other now from the word of the Lord. But she tells him, I don't have food, only a handful of flour in the bowl and a little oil in the jar. So stop. I mean, we're about to read it, but let me just get ahead of myself. Because this is so good. Look at how she's talking. See, when you have little, you start to think little. And so little, right? Because she answered him and said, I don't have any food. But then she continues talking and she does have something. But that's how we trick ourselves, right? We look at like what's in the natural. We look at our natural means of things and then we limit ourselves based upon what we can see. We forget about what God has already said. And we see that's how she feels because he says, I don't have anything. But then she keeps talking and she says what she has. So she's already psyched herself out of this. And so look how the man of God responds to this, to combat this negative speaking death over herself. So, wait, I didn't even finish verse 12. So picking up in verse 12, it says, and behold, I am gathering a few sticks so that I may go in and prepare it for me and my son so that we may eat it and die. Right? However, Elijah said to her, do not fear, go, do as you have said. Just make me a little bread loaf from it first and bring it out to me, and afterward you may make one for yourself and for your son. All right. He wouldn't have made this request of her if it wasn't in her means to do it. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: the bowl of flour shall not be used up, nor shall the jar of oil become empty until the day that the Lord provides rain on the face of the earth. So she went and did everything in accordance with the word of Elijah, and he and her household ate for many days. It says the bowl of flour was not used up, nor did the jar of oil become empty, in accordance with the word of the Lord, which he spoke through Elijah. And this is a great offering message, because there are people, many people in her position, where they don't have any finances. And so you know what they say? Or they have little finances. So you know what they say? They say, I don't have anything. And they think to themselves, well, I have nothing to give, because when I'm looking at what I actually do have, it's little. But then you see, right? God tells her, sow even that little. If you even consider just one simple seed, that's little. But then if you allow yourself to sow it and plant it, you know what happens with that seed? It grows into a plant that bears much, honestly, an untold amount of fruit, as long as you keep the seed alive, right? And so even though, yeah, in the natural she had little, the thing is, don't you know what God can do with our little? I think the phrase is God does a lot with our little, or God can do a lot with our little. And we see that time after time in the Bible. Even when if we jump forward to Jesus feeding the multitudes, he took a little, what was it? 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish or something like that. And he fed thousands with it. And so you think to yourself, dang, this ain't enough to feed this multitude. We don't have anything to give. But then what does God say? No, put it in my hands. I'll bless it and I'll multiply it. And that's exactly what happened. And so there's even another tier to this, right? Because who does she actually put it in the hands of, or in the belly of, so to speak? I'm asking you.
The guy?
Yeah, the guy. She put it in the belly of Elijah. So her sowing was given to the man of God. But in her taking care of God's man, now God's going to take care of her. And that's exactly what we just read. And so her being so focused on, I don't have anything because I have so little, I'm about to just die. Sure, yes, God asked me this. She knew God asked her that. But when she's looking at, she's asking herself, how am I supposed to do that when I don't even have enough for my household? But that's why you sow, because you don't have enough. God's not asking you to sow so that you can die. Like that's what her plan was. God's asking you to sow so he can bring something to life. But he can't do that. You can't get a harvest from something that you didn't sow. You're not God. But God is, glory. Glory. But God is. And so let him do more with your little. And that's exactly what happened. And so this is not even a Jewish woman. And she's experienced such a blessing simply because she blessed the man of God. In the Bible, the way it goes is if you receive a prophet in the name of a prophet, you also receive a prophet's reward. And so what Elijah spoke over her, it came to pass. We just read it. And miracles like this, they do still happen today, and they should continue to happen today if people will be as faithful or as focused as Elijah made this widow to be. And even still, the situation, remember I was talking about like Ahab is worse than Kamala Harris. Mm-hmm. But Ahab is king. And Elijah's living under his authority in the natural, right? Because this is the king. He's saying what's going on in the government. I don't think we've had nobody in government that's worse than Ahab. And still Elijah's being provided for, cared for, right? And like manner, the widow was also suffering the same thing, and even more so because widows can't own anything back in this time. It was the men that could own. That's why we'll read about it soon enough that, or did we already read about it? Yeah, did we? Ruth, yeah, we already read about it. That's why Ruth and Naomi had to sell the property when they got back to their to Naomi's home place, because the women weren't allowed to own it. But that's why Boaz came and redeemed, so he purchased it, so they didn't have to get rid of their house. But we see here, right? This widow has no means to provide for herself, care for herself, because she can't own anything. She only has a son, and you can assume maybe there's more people in her household, but obviously nobody that's able to care for the entire house. And then here comes the man of God. Sow something so that I can speak a blessing over it and watch what God will do. All right, picking up in verse 17. Now it happened after these things. I didn't even finish the we'll get to it in Luke 4. It jumps back. All right, so now it happened after these things that the son of the woman, the mistress of the house, became sick. So the lady's son is sick. And his condition became very grave until at the end he was no longer breathing. Excuse me. So she said to Elijah, "Why is my business any of yours, you man of God? Yet you have come to me to bring me wrongdoing, or bring my wrongdoing to remembrance, and to put my son to death." And so it was a known thing that if you did bad, bad things came to you here. And so she's saying, is it because of my sins that my son has been put to death? This is only happening because you're here. And so he says to her in verse 19, "All right, give me your son." Then he took him from her arms and carried him up to the stairs, or upstairs. Right, all of that wrong. Let me just start over. Then he took him, her son, from her arms and carried him up. No. It just is worded weird. That's why I'm messing up. Up to the upstairs room? Bro. All right, anyway. So he took him upstairs to his room and laid him on his bed. And he called to the Lord and said, "Lord, my God, have you also brought catastrophe?" I forgot all about this word. I got to start using catastrophe. I got to put that in the message Monday. Catastrophe. "Upon the widow with whom I am staying by causing her son to die." And I've said this before, but you got to keep in mind that when you're blessed of God, where you go is a blessed place. So she received a prophet reward.
Bro.
Hey, shout out to Rotimi. If you guys aren't subscribed to Cole Ministries, what are you doing? All right, so now even Elijah's asking, like, all right, she does kind of have a point. How am I here and you're still like bringing catastrophe on this place? I'm in the house. It's the same way how the ark was in Obed-Edom's house and they blessed everything. Elijah's also like, hey, God, she's kind of right. How am I here and catastrophe's falling on this place? But it says, then he stretched himself out over the boy 3 times and called to the Lord and said, "Lord, my God, please let this boy's life return to him." And the Lord listened to the voice of Elijah, and the life of the boy returned to him, and he revived. Elijah then took the boy and brought him down from the upstairs room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, "See, your son is alive." Then the woman said to Elijah, "Now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is true." And so all of this blessing, this is literally another tale of the ark being at Obed-Edom's house. Because Obed-Edom wasn't a Jew, but he was still blessed. The woman of Zarephath, the widow, is not a Jew. Her son, obviously, is not a Jew. But then you see you have a blessed man of God there. And they've partnered their lives with the man of God. He's staying with them. She's providing for him. And because of that, now God's blessing them. So what would have happened with catastrophe falling onto her household couldn't remain, right? The plague coming on her son, it couldn't remain because there was a man of God there. And when he prayed for the boy, even death couldn't stay. Even death couldn't keep him. So now it happened, this is verse 1 of chapter 18. Now it happened after many days that the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the 3rd year. So this is the 3rd year, right? Yes or no?
Yeah.
All right, I'm just making sure you're paying attention. Saying, "Go present yourself to Ahab." Who's Ahab?
The king.
All right. And where?
Israel.
Yes. Good job. "And I will provide rain on the face of the earth." So it's been 3 years without rain. And now the word of the Lord comes to Elijah. He's like, all right, now go present yourself again to Ahab. It's time for the rain. So Elijah went to present himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Now, who was it? Was it Omri? Or was it whoever was before Omri or Omri himself, kings of Israel that from the past? One of them set up Samaria to be where the king resided for Israel because Jerusalem is in Judah's territory and they're like on bad terms. It says Ahab summoned Obadiah, who was in charge of the household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly, for when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by fifties in a cave and provided them with bread and water. It says then Ahab, so even look here, even in the midst of the persecution from Jezebel, people are still getting provided for. The prophets are still getting water. It says, then Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water. Wait. Okay, yeah. My bad. I was still thinking about Elijah. So then Ahab said to Obadiah, go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the river valleys. Perhaps we will find grass and keep the horses and mules alive and not have to kill some of the cattle. And you see what's going on? Or what we were talking about earlier, because of a lack of rain, there's a lack of crop. Because of a lack of crop, the cattle don't have anything to eat, and they have too many cattle. It's just worse. Not having rain does a lot. So they divided the land between. Not having rain is like poverty. It just gives place to a lot more other negative stuff. So they divided the land between them to survey it, Ahab the king and Obadiah, who was a man that fears the Lord. Ahab went one way by himself, and Obadiah went another way by himself. Now, as Obadiah was on the way, behold, Elijah met him and recognized him and fell on his face and said, and Obadiah recognized Elijah, fell on his face and said, is it you, Elijah, my master? And so Elijah says to him, it is I. Go, say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. And he said, what sin have I committed that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to put me to death? As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is no nation or kingdom to which my master has not sent word to search for you. And whenever they say he is not here, he makes the kingdom or nation swear that they cannot find you. Yet now you are saying, go say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. And it will come about when I leave you that the Spirit of the Lord will carry you to where I don't know, or where I do not know. So when I come and inform Ahab and he can't find you, he will kill me, though I, your servant, have feared the Lord from my youth. And so Elijah's saying, all right, go tell, he actually gives him like a pejorative. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Let me look that up really quickly. Pejorative. Definition. Yes, expressing contempt or disapproval. And so Elijah's kind of like not cool with Obadiah to a degree. And so Obadiah presents himself. He's like, oh, is it my master Elijah? And Elijah goes, no, go tell your master Ahab, right? That's your master. And then he tells him something that actually is going to put his life at risk. And that's what Obadiah is fearing. Because Elijah says, go tell Ahab, Elijah's here. And Obadiah goes, Ahab's been searching for you since the first day you shut up the heavens. And the thing is, it's gotten so serious that when he goes to these other nations and asks, are you there? And they say no, he makes them prove it. He makes them swear. Right? So you know how serious covenants are back then. So if you swear, it's like your life is on the line. And so Obadiah's like, you want me to just pull up to him and just be like, Elijah's here. Like the Spirit of the Lord can't just take you somewhere, who knows where. And then my life is going to be in Ahab's hands. And so Obadiah's like, that's crazy. It doesn't matter like how you feel, but Obadiah's like, I've feared the Lord since my youth. Like, come on, do right by me. So 13, he says, has it not been reported to my master what I did when Jezebel killed the prophets of the Lord Okay. So he's saying, hasn't it, like, this is rhetorical, that when Jezebel killed the prophets, how I hid 100 prophets of the Lord by fifties in a cave and provided them with bread and water. All right, so even Ahab is aware of that. Yet now you are saying, go, say to your master, behold, Elijah is here. He will then kill me, Then Elijah said, all right, this is the case. He's saying that because Ahab is aware that he hit the prophets. And so if he just comes out of nowhere, it's like, yeah, Elijah's here. You know what Ahab's going to think? That Elijah was among the prophets that Obadiah hid from Ahab, or that Obadiah hid from Jezebel. And so that looks like treason. So then Elijah said, as surely as the Lord of armies lives before whom I stand, I will certainly present myself to him today. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and informed him. Then Ahab went to meet Elijah. All right. So when Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, let me collect myself. Is this you, the cause of disaster to Israel? So look how he talks to the prophet. He said, I have not brought disaster to Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have abandoned the commandments of the Lord and you have followed the Baals. That's so good, actually. Because this is how Ahab feels. All the trouble that's going on in Israel is because Elijah shut up the heavens. But the thing is, why Elijah didn't just shut up the heavens. God told him to do so. Because of what? Ahab and Ahab's house. And so look at him wanting to blame other people for the trouble he's caused. It says, now then, send orders and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with the 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. So Ahab sent orders among all the sons of Israel. Let's pause here again. Look at the respect the king puts on the prophet. Prophet comes up and says, yeah, go gather everybody. Let's meet at Mount Carmel. The king just does it. So Ahab sent orders among all the sons of Israel and brought the prophets together at the mountain. Then Elijah approached all the people and said, how long are you going to struggle with the two choices? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer him so much as a word. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left as a prophet of the Lord, while Baal's prophets are 450 men. So Elijah, he's the only one there on account of God. He's saying, I'm standing before you as one man, while y'all are 450. And so it says, I said that because people say this as if like Elijah was like some arrogant person. Maybe, but I mean, let's look at it from a different lens. He's the only one standing there on behalf of God, which is a bold thing to do. Like, that's as bold as David standing before Goliath. Now have them give us 2 oxen, verse 23, and have them choose the one ox for themselves and cut it up and place it on the wood. But put no fire under it, and I will prepare the other ox and lay it on the wood. And so he says, I will not put a fire under it. All right. So they're preparing offerings, right? Oxen. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. And so it's like, you guys get a sacrifice, I get a sacrifice. I'm not going to put any fire under it. You don't put any fire under it. This is what we're going to do. You call out to your God, I'll call out to the God. And the God that answers by fire will be God. No more of this Baal and God stuff. It's one or the other. And we're going to pick by the God who answers by fire. And all the people replied, all right, yep, we're good with that. 25. So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose one ox for yourselves and prepare it first, since there are many of you, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. 26 says, then they took the ox which was given to them, and they prepared it, and they called out on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. They were like, Bolinti, Bolinti. All right, but there was no voice and no one answered. And they limped about the altar which they had made. And at noon Elijah ridiculed them and said, call out with a loud voice, since he is a god. Undoubtedly he is attending to business. He's saying he went to the bathroom. Or is on the way, or is on a journey. Perhaps he is asleep and will awaken. So they cried out with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until blood gushed out on them. So they started doing some blood ritual type stuff. When midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice. But there was no voice, no one answered, and no one paid attention. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come forward to me." So all the people came forward to him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. Man, there's a good message there.
He literally let them sit there and wait
Yeah,
and try.
it was amusing to him. Man, that's so good. Well, you see here, right? How the false prophets have destroyed the altar. And so people have come searching, right? They've come to try and sacrifice. They've come to church. They've been seeking God. But the thing is, the false prophets have destroyed the altar. And so they've come to a waste place. They've come seeking life, the life giver. But where they were supposed to find him has turned into a waste place because of the false prophets. You know what that looks like today? Certain churches. Like that one down the street that we looked at his Instagram. All right. But Elijah prepares the altar. Oh, glory to God. Ooh. God sends the remnant to come and prepare the altar that the false prophets have ruined, that they've destroyed, that they turned into a waste place. The man of God repairs the altar. That's what it looked like when you go and buy the church that the people got kicked out of because they were talking about all that LGBTQ stuff. And you return it back to a place of righteousness. 31 says, Then Elijah took 12 stones, corresponding to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, Israel shall be your name. So let's keep in mind here. I have a message on this, but I'll try not to preach it. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made a trench around the altar, large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Then he did all this by himself. Then he laid out the wood, and he cut the ox in pieces and placed it on the wood. And he said, fill 4 large jars with water. And why did I say it like that? Fill 4 large jars with water. There should be a comma right here. And pour it on the burnt offering, comma, and on the wood. And he said, do it a second time. All right, because it's God who answers by fire. So he has he's rebuilt the altar. He's prepared the ox. He's put stones on the altar. He's laid that stuff on top of the stones. He's gotten wood as well. Puts the ox on there, and then he just drenches everything.
To prove it even more.
Yes. And then he just drench it twice, right? All right. He doesn't just drench it once. He drenches it twice. Oh, wait. Do it a third time, he says. So they did it a third time. But check this out. I've even missed this my first 15 times reading this. You remember, Jay? What's been going on in Israel for the past 3 years? Starts with an F. Famine. So is there any rain?
No.
And he just poured 4 large jars of water 3 times. So he's given 12, right? 12 offerings of water on this altar. In a time of famine. I mean, that's drastic, y'all. That's as drastic. That's as catastrophic, all right?
Catastrophe.
That's as drastic as the woman feeding him when she only had enough to make just one more meal.
Yeah.
But what did God do? He answered. All right? So what am I telling you? The more you feel the offering that you are sowing, the more it hurts you, the more it'll move God to answer. So the water flowed around the altar, and it also filled the trench with water. All right. So even more water. All right. It says, then at the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet approached and said, Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. Why does he say and Israel? Well, because he's in Israel. And the people that are in charge in Israel have been serving Baal. So he's like, let's not forget who's really God here, you false prophets. Okay, it says, today let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and that I have done all these things at your word. Here's the caveat here, right? Even when you're sowing or giving, the woman, the widow, she gave as according to what the Lord said. And so this is what Elijah, he gives us the caveat here. He's done all of this, even pouring out the water, as according to God's word. He says in verse 37, answer me, Lord, answer me, so that this people may know that you, Lord, are God, and that you have turned their heart back. And this is kind of reminding me of John chapter 11, where Jesus is like, I think that you always hear me, but I'm just talking out loud for the sake of these people's belief.
Oh, yeah.
Verse 38 says, then the fire of the Lord. So how long did he pray?
Few seconds.
Few seconds. And then I can't even imagine this. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and even the dust. And it licked up the water that was in the trench. The fire licked up the water. All of these things are indicative of something as well. But all of this is just, it's symbolic of a cleansing. This fire came and purified. Supernaturally. All right, so it says, when all the people saw this, they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, he is God. The Lord, he is God. Hold on. Let me see how they say it in the original language. Go to my lexicon. Why do you got all these apps that we don't use in the front? Boom. Wait. Now I got to reorganize this. And then, there we go. This is how it should be. Doesn't that look better? All right, so 1 Kings 18, what verse? 39. So what Dim is saying is, oh, hey, Manna, nice to see you again.
Hello.
Oh, glory to God. I'm glad you enjoyed it. God bless you. So they say the Lord, he is God. They're saying Jehovah, Elohim, Jehovah, Elohim. I knew it was just two words. Jehovah Elohim, Jehovah Elohim. That's what the people shouted. All right, back to business. Verse 40 says, then Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal, do not let one of them escape. So they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and slaughtered them there. So the false prophets get massacred. Now Elijah said to Ahab, go up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of the roar of a heavy shower. I don't like how that is stated in this version. And Elijah said to Ahab, get thee up, eat and drink, for there is a sound of an abundance of rain. He's listening with these prophetic ears. That's the discerning of spirits. People think so deeply on it, right? But it's literally like having the same discernment as if you were a spirit. The way spirits see, the way spirits hear, is God gives you that ability to know what's going on in the realm of the spirit, as if you were of the realm of the spirit. That's the discerning of spirits. Is like, oh, this guy has the strength of 10 oxen. That's the same understanding you have to have about the discerning of spirits. It's as if you were to say this guy has the strength of 10 strong men. This guy has the discerning of spirits. It's a comparison statement, right? And so Elijah says this thing that's been unheard of for 3 years. I just love how he talks to the king. This king who thinks he's somebody, right? You know, this unrighteous king. He's like, hey, you better get up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of the roar of a heavy shower. That is a catastrophe, what they did to this verse in the NASBA version. But I mean, he's even playing on words here because he's saying celebrate. Hey, get up, king. It's time to celebrate. For I hear an abundance of rain. He's so sarcastic. I'm excited to meet this guy. If you're a preacher without like sarcasm, I think you read the Bible wrong. Mm-hmm. So Ahab went up to eat and drink, but Elijah went up to the top of Carmel, and he bent down to the earth and put his face between his knees. And this is not yoga, by the way. And he said to his servant, go up now, look toward the sea. So Elijah has a servant all of a sudden. Let's keep that in mind now. So he had a servant there. So he went up and looked, but he said, there is nothing. Yet Elijah said, go back 7 times. And when he returned the 7th time, he said, behold, a cloud as... Hold on, I think they messed this verse up too. Verse 44 in the King James Version says, and it came to pass at the 7th time that he said, behold, there ariseth a little cloud, oh, this is what it says, out of the sea, like a man's hand. And he said, go up, say unto Ahab, prepare thy chariot, and get thee down, that the rain stop thee not. All right. I hear preachers get rebuked about saying that it was as small as a man's hand, but it does say the cloud was little. Now, it doesn't necessarily say that it was as little as a hand, but nevertheless, let's keep reading. So, 45. Meanwhile, the sky became dark with clouds, and wind came up, and there was a heavy shower, and Ahab rode and went to Jezreel. Then the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he belted his cloak around his waist. He girded his loins and outran Ahab to Jezreel. I think they messed this verse up too. It's like, did they race each other? Okay, they didn't mess it up. You just have to keep the context clues. So let's say something, 2 things about, or 2 topics to discuss out of these last couple of verses. So he says, I think it's Gehazi. No, it's not Gehazi. It's just Elijah's servant. The servant says, I see a cloud like a man's hand. Whose hand do you think it was?
God.
God's hand. God's hand. God's hand is coming back to Israel.
Oh, I thought it was like as the size.
Or well, even still, it's a cloud. A little cloud is still a big cloud. But the thing I just wanted to point out that the cloud looked like a hand.
Oh.
It was God's hand coming back to Israel. It didn't come empty. It came with an abundance of rain. God stretched out his hand over Israel again and brought the rain. And not only that, then the hand of the Lord came upon Elijah. And this is what you got to catch. Because Ahab rode to Jezreel. So what did Ahab go by?
What do you mean?
It says he rode. So what was his form of transportation?
Horse?
Horse, yeah. At that time, even a chariot. And then what does it say what happened when Elijah was touched by the hand of the Lord? What did Elijah do?
Outrun him.
So the king rode and Elijah ran. Guys, you got to see this here. Let's bring this into an actuality. Or this is reality, but even still, let's bring this to a more modern or a broader sense to think about it. There are great men with great things. And with these great things, they're riding upon it and they're getting places. But when the hand of God comes upon you, because it's not on them. Yes, sure, they're a great person. They're riding on top of these great things. But they don't have the hand of the Lord. And when the hand of the Lord comes upon you, you outrun the great men that are just riding on top of the great things. When God touches you, you outrun the people that are ahead and without the Lord.
That's what Sean was saying. He gives you speed.
Yeah.
Is there a verse for that or something
This
that he was going off of?
Well, you say stuff like that prophetically, which means that like you apply it to this principle. So you can take a verse and make a principle out of it. And that's kind of like speaking prophetically, meaning that you can apply this in certain situations, because for something to be prophetic means that it pertains to certain times, events, yada, yada. And so prophetically speaking, God gives you speed. And there are people that are ahead of you, or they should be ahead of you. But when God gives you speed, you outrun them. Doesn't matter about their pace, doesn't matter about what they're using, what they're utilizing. When God gives you speed, he takes you from the back to the front. And so, and I've preached on this verse too about, yeah, God will give you speed, but you don't skip development. God gave Elijah speed, but Elijah still had to run the whole way there.
And you can think too, if you're not blessed, things can happen on the way there that wouldn't happen for someone who is blessed. Like, I don't know, their horse got injured or something and they had to like wait a bit. Mm-hmm. Like just stuff like that, you know?
I mean, yeah, and if he's riding
so
on
it
horses,
slows you down.
Right.
And thinking of people that don't have God, they're slowed down by so many things because they don't have the blessing of the Lord on them.
That's so good, because
they're not protected.
Let's apply this to the rain that's going on here, right? The rain might slow the horses down, might slow the chariots down, or it will for sure slow chariots down, because it's like chariot wheels on wet ground. All right, and so when God brings the rain, the people that are without him, without God's hand upon them, when God brings the rain, it hinders them. But when God's hand is upon you and the latter rain comes, all it does is help you. So the move of God is hindering everyone else, but it's helping God's people. And so, all right, I think we got through most of it. If I go back, I just talk about so much. So I think we'll end here, because now this is where the story changes or takes a slight turn. So now Ahab told Jezebel everything that Elijah had done. So he goes home and he talks with his wife, and how Elijah killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, "So may the gods do to me, and more so, if by about this time tomorrow I do not make your life like the life of one of them." So she threatened him. She threatened Elijah's life. It says, "And so Elijah was afraid and got up and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree. And he asked for himself to die and said, 'Enough, now Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers.' Then he lay down and fell asleep under a..." Okay. So check this out. All the great stuff that Elijah's done, like literally, got Elijah, we get introduced to Elijah, powerful, shuts up the heavens. We get introduced to Elijah. God's providing for him in the midst of a famine, time and time again. And so Elijah's used to God's provision as it comes to, like, I guess food. It really just food. But now Elijah has to trust God for his life. And I wish I had his mind. I mean, I'd have to go listen to some more people about this, maybe even just meditated on it some more. But I don't understand why Elijah was so afraid of Jezebel after all that God has already done, and what I know that Elijah's even about to do. But so he's afraid of this woman. He's afraid of what she can do to him. But where was that fear in front of Ahab? But Ahab had a reverence for the Lord, though, because Ahab is from Israel. But Jezebel has no such reverence. So, yeah, I don't even know why this took the turn that it took. I can't even make sense out of it. Like, you know, you can kind of like justify something, but I don't think there's any reason that Elijah should allow himself to be fearful. But I mean, a case for you in David's life, where David had all the right to be fearful like this, right? Oh, it's so to speak. And he was first put on the run by King Saul. God led David to I think Nod was the place where there was Ahimelech the priest in the temple. Ahimelech feeds him from the showroom bread or whatever, the sacred bread. And then David asked for a weapon. And what was the weapon?
Sword.
From who? Whose sword did it belong? Or who? Oh yeah, I guess that is how you say it. Whose sword did that belong to? It's the name of a ride at Six Flags.
I've never been to Six Flags.
You don't know?
Wait, say it again. What happened?
Whose sword was it?
Where did you get it from? What happened again? Can you tell me what you just said, like before that?
How David pulled up to Ahimelech the priest in Nod, and David
Wasn't it
asked
his
him-
sword?
Yes, but where did David get the sword? Who did David get the sword from? The sword belonged to somebody before David.
Oh, I don't remember that.
No, you do remember. Think about it. There's only a few key characters in David's life.
Saul. But I know it wasn't him.
That was a good guess, though. Because who would have a sword as it relates to David? You know it's not Saul, so who else? When you think of David's life, who would David come across that would have a sword? You're missing a very big character.
Goliath.
Goliath, yes.
But he's dead
Yes. Hey, you know how David killed him?
with a sling.
No.
Oh, it was a sword.
Yeah.
Wait, then where did the slings come from?
No, David had a sling. And you know, David told Goliath, I'm going to cut your head off. And David didn't even pull up with a sword. But Goliath had a sword. And David used a sling, hit Goliath, and then knocked Goliath out. And then David took Goliath's own sword and cut off his head and made a purse out of it. Not literally, but he did carry the head around. And so, even in the time of David's life where he had every right to be fearful, God led him to a place where he could remember the testimony about how I brought you out of Goliath's hand. The same way you stood before Goliath, knowing that I delivered you from the paw of the lion, the paw of the bear, the same way I delivered you from Goliath. Remember the sword. Remember the story. I haven't left you. So I don't understand why Elijah this is so out of character for him based on what we've already read and what we already know about men of God. But whatever. He put too much respect on Jezebel. Anyway, though, verse 5. Then he laid down and fell asleep under a broom tree. But behold, my goodness, there was an angel touching him, and he said to him, arise, eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a round loaf of bread baked on hot coals and a pitcher of water.
Bread was the prime food.
Yeah.
That's why you like bread so much.
So he ate and drank and laid down again. But the angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, arise, eat, because the journey is too long for you. So he arose and ate and drank, and he journeyed in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. So Horeb was where Moses would talk to God. He went a long way. And so we see here, right? God is attempting to take Elijah through that journey that he took David through. To remember, I'm the Lord, your God. There's no reason to fear. And he even feeds him twice and goes on a supernatural journey. Can you go on a hike for 40 days off of two meals? No, that's unheard of. Or I guess it's not unheard of because it's right here, but that's crazy. And so here we have it. Elijah's ready to die. And how does God satiate this desire for death? Just eat, man. You're not you when you're hungry. Here, have a meal. Here, take a loaf and some water. You're talking crazy, bro. I know you just gotta go up to your depressed
True.
friends, suicidal friends. Just give them a loaf and some water. Like, chill, twin. Come on, man. You're just hungry. Anyway, it says, then he came there to a cave and spent the night there. And behold, the word of the Lord came to him. And he said to him, what are you doing here, Elijah? So he's like trying to remind him, what's the vision, bro? Remember, what are you doing here? And he said, I have been very zealous for the Lord, the God of armies, Jehovah Sabaoth. For the sons of Israel have abandoned your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I alone am left, and they have sought to take my life. So he said, okay, I guess you would think after you do such a crazy thing on Mount Carmel and you kill all the false prophets, you think to yourself, oh man, this is surely going to turn the hearts of everybody back unto God. And then you get a message from Jezebel. All right, I'm about to kill you too. He's like, bro, what? That's not how I imagine things to go down. I just did all this great stuff. We can learn a lesson from Jesus here though. Because even after Jesus did all the mighty signs and wonders, miracles, even before, you know what Jesus did? He'd go and pray. So I'm not saying Elijah didn't pray or doesn't pray. He's technically praying right now because he's been talking to God and the angel of the Lord for a minute. But anyway, he was not willing to fulfill, as we'll see. So it says, verse 11, go out and stand on the mountain before the Lord. And behold, the Lord was passing by. And a great and powerful wind was tearing out of the mountains and breaking the rocks. And it's so funny now. Let me finish reading this and then I'll say what I want to say. So God was passing by. It says, and behold, great and powerful wind was tearing out the mountains and breaking the rocks in pieces before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. All that happened and God was just passing by. And so all these people, I understand, you might not be familiar with the move of God, but you see now, the Bible's already told you what the move of God looks like. God's just passing by and rocks are breaking. Wind is tearing the mountain, pushing rocks to and fro, and the rocks are falling, shattering. And all God did was pass by. And you're asking yourself, why are the people falling out when they get touched by the Lord? Like you must, I can stay on that for too long. It says, and after that, even though all this stuff happened, God wasn't in the wind. Okay? So it wasn't like after all of that, then God was just there. No, he wasn't in the wind. It says, and after the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, so God's putting power on display. You're worried about Jezebel? Why? Look at the authority that's backing you. Remember the authority that's backing you, and you're worried about Jezebel. So earthquake happens, God was in an earthquake, and after the earthquake, verse 12, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak and went out and stood in the entrance of the cave. So just imagine like what your mom looks like when she has to walk out the house at night in her little robe. That's how Elijah went out. And behold, a voice came to him and said, what are you doing here, Elijah? So it's the same question from before. Then Elijah goes, same answer. I have been very zealous. Did he say very zealous last time? Yes. So Elijah goes, verse 14, I've been very zealous for the Lord, the God of armies, for the sons of Israel have abandoned your covenant, torn down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword, and I'm the only one left, and they want to take my life too. Then the Lord said to him, go, return on your way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when you have arrived, you shall anoint Hazael king over Aram. And so God did all that stuff to potentially change Elijah's heart. And Elijah's heart didn't change. So then God said, all right, Now it's time to go anoint a new king of Aram, Hazael. You shall also anoint Jehu, the son of Nimshi, king over Israel. It says, and you shall anoint Elisha, the son of Shaphat, of Abel Mahalah, as prophet in your place. And it shall come about that the one who escapes from the sword of Hazael, Jehu shall put to death. And the one who escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha shall put to death. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel. Yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him. Is that what the King James says? Because I've heard this before, and people talk about how Elijah thought he was the only one, and God's response to him was like, no, I actually have 7,000 in Israel. But the way this reads is like God saying, I'm going to put 7,000. Yet I have left me. Okay. It's a translation difference. The King James Version says, yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed to Baal, and every mouth which has not kissed him. So God always has a remnant in each generation, the Bible says in a certain translation. Meaning that God never goes without having somebody to stand on his behalf. And this is the importance. That's what I'm thinking about. And so Elisha's issue, which caused for him to have to pass the vision on to the next generation, so to speak. Not that he's like so sinful about this or anything like that. But Elisha's issue is I have to be more specific. Elisha's issue in this situation is that him and God alone is not enough to him. And to a degree, I mean, that is the case. Because we're called to be a body. But Elisha's gotten to himself thinking that like there's nobody else. I can't do this anymore because I'm the only one. And they're going to take my life. And then who's going to be there? And so he's like, I got to go hide. I got to go whatever. And, God actually informs him, no, I actually have 7,000. That's not how this version reads, but I'm pretty sure every other translation. I'm not pretty sure, but King James Version translation talks about how God actually tells him, no, there's actually 7,000. But to Elijah, well, if they're not doing the work, if they're not out active like the way he's active, they're not operating the way he's operating, you might as well not even be a prophet to him. So he has to go and anoint a new king in Aram, a new king in Hazael in Aram, Jehu in Israel, and there's a new prophet coming to town named Elisha. So he departs from there and found Elisha first, the son of Shaphat, while he was plowing, with 12 yoke of oxen in front of him, and he was with the 12. It says, and Elijah came over to him and threw his cloak on him. Said nothing, just threw it. Then he left the oxen behind and ran after Elijah, and said, please let me kiss my father and my mother, then I will follow you. And he said to him, go back, for what have I done to you? He's like, look, you're not even worthy. I've heard somebody say this. I didn't do my research on it. That when he says kiss or no, I might be thinking of the other disciple. Anyway, and so this is Elijah places his cloak on Elijah places his cloak on Elisha, and that's his basically like call into ministry. Follow me. And so Elisha's aware of what that means. But then he goes and tries to make the request. Well, let me go and, say goodbye, right? And Elijah goes, just go back. Consider what I even just did. So Elisha returned from following him and took the pair of oxen and sacrificed them and cooked their meat with the implements of the oxen and gave it to the people and they ate. Then he got up and followed Elijah and served him. So he answered the call. And he didn't just answer the call, he left everything behind. He destroyed the safety net, It wasn't like, okay, let me go and I'll put the oxen in care of my neighbor. And then when I come back, there was none of that. He killed them, sacrificed them, ate them. There was no going back. He was like, okay, time to just be committed. I'm committed to this now. Because there's no going back. And when you get fully committed, you'll realize there's no need for a plan B when you're fully committed to God. Because plan A just works.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't want to work it, then you got to go and put your cloak over another person and let them take the charge. And so effectively what just happened for Elijah is now he's training his replacement. But that's all nice and dandy, so to speak. So now we get into some good stuff, but we can stop here. I like reading the rest of this. The rest of us, from here to like Second Kings, I would say from here to Chronicles is fun to read. Second Chronicles is also fun to read. I'm not too sure about First Chronicles, except for maybe chapter 16. But I'm sure we'll find some different gems that I haven't realized in my initial times reading these books. But I'm really excited to get to Esther, because then everything after that is just fun to read. Okay. So, prayerfully, I hope you guys learned something. And we'll be back Tuesday. Remember, we have our Cole Ministries Revival Study this coming Monday. It'll also be our Thanksgiving celebration with everyone. So, did we eat first last time?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. So we'll have a message up though. It'll be live stream, but this time it'll be in the it'll be inside. And then also, Christ is All podcast is featuring the Howards, Demarius and Charlene Howard. That video, I'm planning on getting that released by the end of this week. And then I also am planning on recording the teaching, but the thing is, I don't want to record the teaching without actually having finished their podcast. But if I don't even want to say if I don't. However, I don't think I have the time. We have the men's like conference thing tomorrow that I have to go to.
When does it start?
Starts at 6, but we're hanging out with Mr. Will, then we
Yeah.
go to church.
Well, that'll probably last like 2 hours, right?
No, because they're going to eat.
Oh, it's a whole thing?
It's a whole thing.
So when are you leaving?
I've never, like, I'm not familiar with Bishop Bones' style of preaching either. Because I don't know if it's going to feel like a revival night or if he's just going to teach.
That's what I can do. Oh, I gotta talk about that later. Never mind.
But, you know, I can record the teaching. If I go home right now and just lock in and then just finish editing the podcast.
Then we have to walk back down here at 7.
Oh, yeah, we do have to do that. All right. Tell you what, guys, if it comes down to it, I'll just release 2 teachings next week because I don't have any other podcasts planned. And I know what I want to do as well, because I'm not going to be able to get into the full message for Monday. So I'll just turn around and make a teaching out of it for the Christ is All podcast, YouTube channel and whatnot. And I'll do like a whole formal teaching of everything that I have been given from the notes on that. About giving praise, wielding the sword. That's not the official title, but it's just kind of topics that I'm talking about. But all right, thank you guys for tarrying with us even after the yapping. But we love you. God bless you. And stay tuned for more.